What's the most bizarre rule you've had to follow in someone else's house? Story 1. It was an unspoken rule. No eating. A few friends spent the night at a former friend's house when we were teenagers. She offered us a small bowl of macaroni and cheese at about 4 p.m. We thought it was an after-school snack, but that was it. Food wasn't mentioned again. My friends and I woke up in the middle of night, starving, so we went to the kitchen and the cabinets and refrigerator were locked. Story 2. I was probably 9 or 10. A girl staying the day with my friend that was a boy. His dad came in and asked a question and I answered, "Yeah." Friend audibly sucked in a breath before his dad swung around and screamed, "How many times do I have to tell you? The answer is yes, sir." There's literally no way it could have been mistaken for my friend's voice. I was terrified until my mom picked me up. My friend was super apologetic, but even then I knew it wasn't his fault, so I tried to make him feel better about it. Not sure what happened to him, but I can't imagine living in that level of terror every day of my childhood. Story 3. Visited my bestie's family farm for a week. Once you left the house, you could not return until dinner time. You can chill in the old farmhouse or farm garage. When you return to the house they live in, you strip down in the garage, put on a robe and fresh socks. You can then enter the house, drop all your clothes in the washing machine, and to go straight to the shower. After your shower, the robe and socks go into the washer. Once inside and showered, then you are in for the night. We were adults, not kids. This wasn't a livestock farm, and nor did we work in the corn or soy fields. Edit. The mom has OCD. Her entire life is cleaning or mowing. It was never about bugs, as my friend hid this rule from me until we were in the garage. Story 4. Wearing jeans meant the only place I could sit was on one of the kitchen island stools. Kitchen chairs, sofas, or chairs around the house, or any beds were no bueno. Also no shoes inside, which was fine, but also had to remove socks, so walking on cold, hard flooring was super annoying. They didn't like that I brought my own slippers the next time I visited. Avoid going there now as much as I can. Story 5. It was my house when my parents were still married. No closed doors. Bedroom, bathroom, closet, whatever. Only door fully closed was screen door going outside. Porch door cracked at least 1, 3 inches always, depending on weather. Taking a shower, going #2, parents intimate, door is cracked open. I caught several whooping as a youngster and later as 12, 13-year-old for daring to close the door fully when in the bathroom. On rare occasion, we actually had company over, rule enforced on them as well. Story 6. I visited a friend at a lake house for 2 weeks in the summer, and no one was allowed to get up before their dad. This fucking guy would drink until 1-3 a.m., and not wake up till 11 a.m., and would throw a tantrum if anyone made noise before he was able to get up again and drag his ass back to the real world. My friend's mom strictly enforced this the entire time I was there too. The things you look back on from your kid years, man. That was just a hostage situation. Story 7. A friend's family was super strict on water use. If I took a shower, which wasn't that often, but I did occasionally after a sleepover, I had to turn off the water while I washed my hair and body, and only turn it back on when I rinsed. It wasn't the worst rule ever, but dang were those showers cold as her water heater wasn't the greatest. Story 8. I once went to visit my boyfriend's parents' house on the weekend Halloween happened to fall. That Halloween afternoon, they straight up barricaded the windows and doors, turned out all their lights, and insisted I sit with them and only speak in whispers while trick-or-treaters happily skipped past their home, blissfully unaware of the psychopaths residing in the only house with porch lights turned off. They believed all those kids were actually possessed by Satan and made us hide away all night like those sweet little children would rip us apart if they smelled us out. I broke up with that guy as soon as I got home. I don't need people so staunchly anti-trick-or-treater in my life. Story 9. At a friend's house, you were only allowed 1 sandwich at lunch, but unlimited potato chips. So naturally, this incentivized everyone to eat a ton of potato chips. For whatever reason, the kids weren't allowed to make anything but deli meat sandwiches for lunch. I did manage to get the rule relaxed so that I was allowed to warm up canned soup on the stove for us 3 if I was over for lunch. I even made them grilled cheese sandwiches when she wasn't looking. And I was permitted a second sandwich so I didn't starve, but it was very bizarre rule. I also hated cold Velveeta, the only cheese for putting on said sandwiches, and not a fan of potato chips. Supposedly the rule was to help the kids lose weight, but I'm not buying it. And the kids weren't impressed either. Why weren't teenagers allowed to use the stove? Why only deli meat sandwiches? Why unlimited potato chips? Why were fruit and vegetables not a side dish to the sandwich instead of potato chips? Why no tuna fish or PB and J's? Yes, I snuck these into rotation as well because yuck on daily lunch meat sandwiches. So many questions. The two kids loved me staying over because they got to eat something different, since my mom did speak with their stepmom about allowing me more freedom or else I wouldn't be coming over anymore. Fortunately, stepmom wanted me there to entertain the kids and keep them out of her hair, so that threat was sufficient. Personal opinion? Stepmom was too lazy to cook, to meal plan, or to even supervise the kids with the stove if it was unsafe, which I doubted. They were teenagers. A second sandwich would mean more bread, and she needed a certain amount for the dad's lunches and couldn't be bothered to buy another loaf. No, they weren't too poor to afford food. They were wealthier than my family, and we happily fed my friend real food when she stayed over. Such bizarre lunch rules. Story 10. No walking through the dining room to get to the kitchen, even though that was the direct route. We had all taken our shoes off at the door, but my mom will know from the vacuum stripes in the carpet. The way she said it implies that her mom was not just upset about footprints, but would be mad even if we wiped away the footprints, which is staunchly in favor of Cocoa Puffs. Story 11. I had a roommate with a cat that just absolutely adored me. Every time I woke up in the morning to make breakfast, it would harass me for belly rubs, and if I didn't give it attention, it would bite my ankles. Precious little creature. Well, my roommate got jealous of this situation and demanded that I not interact with this cat anymore because they wanted themselves to be the cat's favorite human. I just want to emphasize that this cat loved me so much and would have no idea why I'd suddenly be neglecting it. Story 12, huh? My mother decided to bring a coworker's child into our home. That's cool. I was 8. So she brings this child into our home, and then the child broke some rules. My mom told me that I was responsible for this kid's behavior. The child broke rules, and it was my fault, and I needed to make sure they never broke another rule. My mom liked to look good on the outside and deflect any perceived blame on the inside, even to her 8-year-old kid. Story 13. In my own house. Never allowed to close a bedroom door. No secrets would be kept then if all the bedroom doors were open. But I'm an only child. Why was this the rule? Because it was the rule in my mother's house where there were many children. Why couldn't they keep their doors closed ever? Because it was the rule in the convent orphanage where my grandmother was raised. Then, when I had kids, at first blindly, I imposed this rule. And I had to ask myself why my own kids, who have their own rooms and aren't sharing rooms with siblings, couldn't close their own doors. Because it was rule in the 1920s when my grandmother was growing up in an orphanage in another country. So I reevaluated, and my kids are allowed to close their doors and have privacy. Story 14. Had a friend who was a bit of a hypochondriac. Said she was deathly allergic to cats. At the time, I had a cat. She would make me change my clothes to a newly washed pair. Had to keep a set in a separate bag in order to enter her apartment. What was strange, though, is that she would never feel any effects when we went out together. So definitely a mental thing. Story 15. Kids not allowed to bring any books with anthropomorphic characters into the house. We could play with Legos for hours, but were banned from bringing a Richard Scarry Big Adventure book, or any material with talking animals, or animals wearing clothes. The mom didn't want her children growing up thinking that cats and dogs wore sweaters. I hated that house. Story 16. I was a guest staying for a few days at someone's house. I had an iPhone in their Android household and wasn't allowed to have their Wi-Fi password because of that. I was a college student at the time and brought my MacBook to do homework. I thought they were kidding when they first said that, so when I asked about having it for my laptop, their answer was the same. Story 17. Got invited to a birthday party at a friend's place as a kid, and we decided to watch a movie. Her mom came in to shut it off partway through since they had a strict 1-hour-a-day TV time limit. Not even birthday parties with guests was an exception. Story 18. I win. When I was in high school, my best friend invited me to dinner at her house. Her parents didn't allow laughter at the dinner table. Later, as an adult, I double-checked with her. Were we just out of control laughing, or was that actually a rule at your house? She confirmed that it was a real rule. No laughter of any kind, no matter how mild. ETA. I read the other comments. I don't even come close to winning. I don't even make the top 100. Story 19. I stayed briefly with a friend whose mom didn't allow the toilets to be flushed more than once a day, unless you'd actually dropped a deuce, who only had tiny nightlights in each room for illumination, didn't believe in either heating or air conditioning, and stole playground sand from the park down the street to use in the cat box. She didn't have furniture, other than her bed. My friend and I slept on moving pads in a bedroom, with no blankets or pillows. I remember eating 2 cheese sandwiches a day, and by sandwiches I mean 1 slice of knockoff Kraft cheese between 2 slices of the cheapest white bread possible. She drove a very expensive car, and according to my friend, worked a very high-paying job, and had no debt to speak of thanks to all the child support she got from his dad after the divorce. After 2 days of this, we both slipped out in the middle of the night because she wouldn't let us go anywhere during the day. I found some other friends to crash with, and my friend went to his dad's house in another state. I found out years later that she eventually became a complete shut-in and hoarder due to some substantial mental issues she'd been dealing with, even then. When she passed, her house was absolutely full of junk. Story 20. I, a fully grown adult, needed to ask permission to turn on any lights when I visited my mother at the apartment I grew up in. Not because they were worried about their electric bill or anything. No reason was actually given. I was just told off for turning on the kitchen light and was told I had to ask permission and apologize. Needless to say, I have not visited since. Story 21. Had a babysitter/friend of my single dad that would babysit me every so often so we could have a night off. I would sleep over, and there was always one night of the week where we had to sleep with our feet at the headboard. I was like 3 or 4 remembering how fucking weird of a rule that was. LOL. Story 22. I worked at my employer's home for about a year. Most odd experience ever. Her and her husband worked for the company and we all worked out of their home. My coworker and I were not allowed to wear perfume or anything scented. One day my boss swore she smelt perfume and she called my coworker and I into her office and started sniffing like a bloodhound. Neither of us were crazy enough to wear perfume, but she wouldn't drop it. She brought it up multiple times, eventually just accused us of using overly scented body wash or hair products. LOL. I commuted about 45 minutes to work at her home, so I obviously was unable to go home for lunch. I brought a lunchbox the first few days I worked there and had it in her fridge. After a couple of days, she basically insinuated I was selfish for taking up space in her personal fridge and asked if I would downsize my lunch and start using a plastic bag instead. Those are the 2 that always stand out to me in my memory, but there were many more. Haha. Story 23. I'm an adult, mid-40s, and I was visiting a friend's house, also adult. She is married and her hubby is around 10 years older than me. She's a couple years younger than me. They have 4 children. As we live a fair way from each other, if I visit, that means I'm staying over. So we always plan that I'm there for dinner, and then we can have a few drinks and watch a movie, play cards, etc., etc. Her husband has the most bizarre set of rules about alcohol. If the children are still awake, no booze. For any of us. Now okay, whatever. Maybe some people don't like drinking in front of their kids. But it's not so much that he cares that the kids see the alcohol being drank. It's that the adults must remain sober in case anything happens with the kids if there's a medical episode, 3 of the 4 are special needs, or whatever. I can understand saying that at least one adult must remain sober, but no. He insists that nobody can have even 1 drink while the kids are still awake. Then it gets weirder. Once the kids are asleep in bed, he's more than happy if all the adults, including the eldest kid who is late teens, all get absolutely rolling drunk. Nobody has to stay sober or even tipsy. He is happiest when refilling the glasses as many times as possible. The chances of a medical episode from one of the kids is just as likely when they're sleeping as it is when they're awake, so I really don't understand that rule at all. If he's okay with all adults getting smashed after the kiddies' bedtime, why is it so bad for a glass of wine with dinner? The kids know we drink, they see the alcohol and understand what it is, but we can't consume a drop if their eyes are still open. And if he's away while I visit, his wife, my friend, must ring him and ask permission to have a glass or 2 after the kids have gone to bed. And even then, he insists that both of us are under strict orders to have no more than 2 drinks each, just in case something happens with the kids, even though if he's home, it's fine for all 3 of us to have 5 or 8 or more. I don't get it. And to be fair, I don't visit that often. Story 24. When I was a kid, my dad refused to ever let me wear shoes in the house, and if I forgot anything upstairs before we were about to leave, I'd have to physically take them back off, run upstairs, and put them back on back downstairs. A few times I'd run so fast he wouldn't catch me still having them on. He would have ended me, Lolo. And now because of him, I don't like shoes in the house. They can be inside but need to be near front door or put up in the closet and cleaned on the bottom. I swear he gave me the gift of diagnosed OCD. Story 25. When I was working as a student research assistant in Chicago, I stayed at this lady's house with 3 other roommates ranging in age from 20 to 50. She required all of us to wipe down the entire kitchen with bleach after every single use, no matter how small. There was this one time she told me her son was a doctor and had advised her to regularly drink water with a bit of bleach in it. It was very odd. Story 26. When I was a kid in Sweden in the 80s, some friends' families didn't serve me any food. Family dinners were for family only, and I had to wait in my friend's room until he had finished eating. I was starving. Many years later, like 2 years ago or so, it became a huge online discussion and even made it into the news. Turns out this was very common in all of Sweden, but not everyone recognized it ever having been a thing. Some could swear they experienced it, while others claimed it must have been very isolated events. Anyway, it was the case for me, and my mom was baffled that some parents could to this. At our place, any friend I ever had over was severed food. Don't matter if it was planned or not, my parents would give them their food if there wasn't enough. Story 27. I stayed in a rental once, where you weren't allowed to bring onions in the house due to the host's allergies. Good luck with basically any leftovers. And the kitchen trash can was barely bigger than a 1-quart bag because she wanted you to take the trash out daily due to feng shui. The idea that the host was concerned about things like energy and flow was fascinating because it was without question the most cluttered rental I've ever stayed in. Super clean, but every surface was covered in knickknacks and other random stuff. They must have dusted everything between guests, and it must have been taken an extra couple hours. This is all fine to do in your own home, of course, but that's a whole lot to put on paying guests. Story 28. My BFF's mom had rules about her not being allowed outside of her BFF's bedroom unless she was completely, nicely dressed, including shoes, a low heel was preferable, hair and makeup done, along with any touch-ups her nails may need. Found that out the first time I slept over at her house. We were 13. Rules applied to me too, and were bitchily reinforced LOL. Oh, and she wasn't allowed to speak to her stepdad unless he spoke first. If she needed his attention or help with something, she'd just kind of stand near him until he acknowledged her. Or not. Story 29. I don't like staying at my relatives' or friends' house. I always prefer hotels. As my mother asked me to stay at one of my cousin's house, I had to stay there. She suffered from severe OCD, I guess. She will clean everything again, even we clean it. It was my last of my chums, and I had to throw a napkin. I asked her about the garbage bin, and she literally took me out of her house to throw it in a random place on the streets. I hate to throw anything on the streets, and this was outrageous. It was her house, so I had to follow the rules. This time, I booked a hotel and asked Mom not to inform her that we are in her city. Story 30. How do you dispose of the cardboard box for a 12-pack of soda pop? Tear it up, kind of fold it up, and then stick in the trash, boy, are you wrong? The correct way is to open both ends and then tuck them inside the box. Then it is folded in half widthwise, then in half lengthwise, and the in half again. At this point, you get a piece of tape and go around it twice to hold it in this compacted shape. At this point, you then place it in the trash so that it is flush with the side of the can, so as to not take up room for future trash that is deposited in said trash can. Edit. This was long before recycling cardboard was a thing. Story 31. It's not bizarre, but apparently it was an unspoken rule that you would wake up early, take a shower, get dressed, then come downstairs to eat breakfast with the family. It was my first time sleeping over, and my friend did not tell me this. We woke up and she told me she was going to the bathroom. Fine. I sat there in bed for about an hour doing nothing. This was before smartphones, and she didn't have a TV or anything interesting in her room. Eventually, I got curious on to what was taking so long. I walked downstairs into the kitchen and was mortified. Me, still in my pajamas and unbrushed hair, stumble onto them all dressed to the 9S having a family breakfast. Pancakes, eggs, bacon, orange juice, the works. To make it worse, they said that they only made enough for them so I couldn't have any. They offered me cereal, which I politely refused. Needless to say, a heads up would have been nice. I never returned there to stay the night again, lol. Story 32. That one friend's mom was so cheap. When me and other friends would visit, she wouldn't let us eat snacks when we visited because we didn't pay for it. Well, I wouldn't have a problem if they were not good with money, but she seriously told her son, "Don't share this in front of me and other friends." We once brought snacks, let it in the kitchen to eat it later, and we went to eat it. She'd put them in the cabinet and said something in the lines of, "You play video games and I pay for it, so that's how you pay to play." We then fought her and she kicked us out and foreboded us to hang out with her son.